And welcome back to the Big Dynasty Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Walker. You can find me on Twitter at TonyTBDE. Joined always today with my co-host and good friend, Kevin. You can find him on Twitter at Offset. Kevin, say hi to the people, Kevin.
Hey, what's up?
And we are talking week one this week. There's some pretty big topics to talk about. There's some stuff going on in Denver, some stuff going on with the Rams and Cooper Cup. A weird game last night, in my opinion. I know we have some talking points to talk about, Jahmyr Gibbs and the Detroit Lions, and also what the hell's going on with Kansas City. They're just a completely stale team without Travis Kelce. So a lot to go through. We got some starts and sits for you. Again, we're recording about 10 o'clock Central Time on September 8th, Friday, September 8th. So again, keep an eye on all injury news. Check out Jake Glazer on Twitter. He's a great guy to follow for all breaking injury news. We'll also be talking about guys to start stashing away for later on in the season, both in Dynasty and in redraft formats. And got some bonus content later where we're going to get into some daily fantasy sports. So, Kevin, let's start by talking about last night. Weird game. Kansas City looked a little stale. I knew that, being week one and Travis Kelce being out, that there was going to be some questions with this team. But what the hell happened? Like, they did not look good whatsoever.
Uh, I mean, we knew that Kelsey being out was gonna be a little bit of a setback, but Mahomes is a magician, so he's supposed to just conquer all. But I guess that he actually does need receivers to throw to. We were not hyping any of the receivers going into the game because I think we were kind of taking a wait and see approach. It's kind of like a roulette wheel. We didn't really know who would step up, and I guess we got our answers: no one. But especially like a little piece of me was thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe I should throw Kadarius Toney into my flex spot with Kelsey out. I didn't. I'm glad I didn't. What the hell happened to Kadarius Toney? What are your thoughts, other
Yeah,
Tony?
and I was big on him when he was with the Giants because I thought with what they ran in New York, the short and shallow scheme, I thought he fit that system. And when he initially got traded last year to the Chiefs, I was like, okay, I was a shareholder of him at the time. But the injury concerns, obviously the drop passes last night, one drop was a drop that turned into a pick six somehow. There's a
Yeah,
really good picture of him, balls in his chest, hit him in the hands, and then the SpongeBob, 2 minutes later, kind of transition. All of a sudden, Detroit's taking it back the other way for six, and then on the
yeah.
final, and
He
then
he
yeah,
should he should give those 2 points back to Mahomes, and that should be
hundred
-2
percent,
on his box score, which
hundred
would put him
percent.
in negative points.
Well, and then on the last drive of the game too for the Chiefs, I think it was like 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 10, and he ran this really nice route middle of the field, and Mahomes hit him, right in the numbers, and somehow he dropped it. And the Boo Birds came out, and I think that was the loudest Kansas City has had in terms of boos, probably in the last 6 years at that stadium. I don't know. This team, it's I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach. Another guy that I was a little disappointed with was Isaiah Pacheco. I was expecting him to be involved way more in the game plan with uh, Kelsey being out. I was expecting him to be used more in the passing game. I know Jerick McKinnon is their primary pass catching back, but I know Pacheco is capable of picking up that slack as well. So I don't know. I'm completely on Kadarius Toney. If he's on my bench, I'm cutting him. Or if anyone's willing to trade for him, I'm trading him for a 2027 fourth round pick. I don't care. I just want the roster spot at this point. There is no
Yeah.
there's no way of him getting my confidence back. I mean, he could turn out and still be the wide receiver one this year, and I'll tell you that it was just straight luck. There's no way that this guy's going to be relevant in this league between the drops and the injuries. I'm not in on him anymore. I'm done.
Yeah, I'm trying to not super overreact. I mean, I guess Watson looked good for a little bit. Sky Moore was out there a bunch. He
He
just didn't really
disappeared.
do anything.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
second most routes run on the team last night and disappeared. There's been all this.
Rasheed Rice was okay because he got
Yeah,
the touchdown, but that was
I
about
mean,
it. Maybe an uptick for him.
yeah, I mean, you take away that touchdown though, and what did he do? I
Nothing.
mean, I mean, let's pull up his stats really quick from last night. I mean, I don't think he really did much. I mean, last night, Rashi Rice, he had one carry for -3 yards, three receptions for 29 yards and a touchdown. So you take away that 2-yard touchdown. he's sitting on 4 points in PPR formats. Not
Yeah,
much, not much to write home about.
I think on Kansas City, my takeaway is that Kelsey, more than just his stats, I think he opens everything up for that
Oh,
offense. And he's
100%.
him and Mahomes are both kind of the straw that stirs that drink. So they need him back. It's a long week before their next game. So hopefully, if he was that close to playing, he's ready to play. But yeah, they need him, and they
Mhm.
need him to stay healthy.
Agreed. Yeah, so let's finish the Thursday night game up. Let's go to the other side of the field and let's talk about Detroit. Dan
Super Bowl.
Dan Campbell earlier this in the week had said we are going to use Jameer Gibbs in ways people don't expect. I don't think people were expecting that way to be on the bench. Uh I was excited to watch this guy play. I mean, I'm playing against him in several leagues. And he looked explosive. I mean, he had a couple of really nice runs, but to finish the game with 7 carries for 42 yards and 2 receptions for 18 yards, I mean, the guy had 2 catches in the first half and then just disappeared in the passing game. I thought, for sure in the second half when, the game was still close. I mean, I say close the whole game, but I thought for sure that they were going to try and get some more of those slip screens underneath to him. They were going to try and get him involved in the passing game because that's what he did, great at in college. But 7 carries for 42 yards, granted, it is a 6 yard per, carry average, which is great. Why would you stop that? Why did they not play him? Was it because he's a rookie and it's his first game? Is it because they were finding some kind of success with David Montgomery? Because the passing game for Detroit didn't look that great other than Sam Laporta. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
Amon-Ra looked great. Um, but why eliminate Gibbs from the game plan so quickly?
I mean, you saw our Instagram page had the hype train rolling for Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we were on that train a little bit too much, but I saw the coach's comments after the game saying that they didn't play him as much because they wanted him to get a feel for the NFL game and just kind of watch Montgomery in his first game. So whatever. I guess old school. You got to earn your snaps or whatever.
Mm.
But I do think that's probably the most lopsided you're going to see the carries. I think he's going to get more and more carries as the year goes on. So if you have a guy that's a Gibbs owner that's overreacting, maybe try to snatch him away from him if they have an overreaction to how much he plays. I think he's gonna, as the year goes on, get more and more snaps, and you're gonna see less Montgomery. Except I don't know, maybe game script if the Lions are up, Montgomery gets more carries
More of that possession guy. Yeah.
because he really didn't do anything in the passing game. And honestly, I thought that Montgomery looked a hell of a lot less explosive on his carries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Gibbs, I thought was going to score a touchdown. That first one, when they got down to the goal line, he made a cut to the outside and then he tripped and fell. If he wouldn't have fallen down, he was
Oh,
gonna go
he would have
in
walked in.
and his night would have looked a lot better. That and then the very next play they found Amon-Ra for the
Mm-hmm.
touchdown. So I don't know. I'm not overreact. I maybe overreacted on the hype train going into the game, but I'm still high on Gibbs. It's still going to be there. Yeah, maybe try to take advantage of someone else that maybe is overreacting to his not getting many snaps.
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery, when you say wasn't really involved in the passing game, he like not even a target. No targets, no receptions. He had 21 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown that, 5 or 6 yard scurry that he had for that touchdown late in the game. That's what really stamped his average game for an RB2, RB3. I mean, I have in one league and I was sweating for a while. Like, man, it's a 14-team league. Your RB2, you at least want to get 10 points out of them per week. And so, I mean, that did save his night. But yeah, Gibbs just looked way more explosive than Montgomery. And again, after hearing Campbell's comments, like, yeah, it's his first game. You don't want to overdo it. It was a big stage in Kansas City. But in my head, it's like, well, that's when I want to showcase the guy that we drafted in the first round. But more to see on Gibbs. I'm excited to see his growth, even though he's in the NFC North, and we're not a huge fan of our rivals in this division. But we'll see. I think he'll have a good future, and I think this year will still be really good for him. Going on to another key injury. We touched on the Kelsey news. Cooper Cup. There's some growing concern now that he'll be placed on IR, as well as a couple other non-factor Rams, like the 35-year-old rookie Benson, the former UGA quarterback. But How did we not hear about this being more of a serious injury, especially when fantasy drafts were going on? I mean, I know franchises couldn't care less about, fantasy drafts and their players' health, but why is this news of it being this bad just coming out now? I mean, it's like I just read a tweet from a couple hours ago that yeah, it sounds like Saturday could be finalized that Cooper Cup is put on IR.
Yeah, I mean, he tweaked it early on. We knew about that, and he was hoping to be back for week one. And then the reports, if you believe him, was he had a setback or a re-aggravation, and that prompted him to go visit some specialist, and that's why now the reports are getting worse. So, yeah, it's the worst case scenario for Cup.
Yeah. So backup plan on this team then. So like let's say Cup is going to IR. And I think if you're a fantasy owner of Cooper Cup or any guy who is injury prone, who is an older player, who is a high volume player too, who if they're injured, you kind of have to expect them to re-aggravate an injury and miss time because of their involvement with the team, like Cooper Cup, like Tyreek Hill. Go back to the Dalvin Cook days in Minnesota. It happens, right? So what's the backup plan? Are you looking at cheap options like Tyler Higbee? Are you trying to target, Tutu Atwell or any of these other receivers? I know Van Jefferson was a hot pickup as soon as the news broke, and basically every single league across all, fantasy football apps, he was probably one of the biggest pickups. Is there anything in this offense that you're targeting to replace Cooper Cup, or is this now a team that you're just like, if I can get, Cam Akers, I'll take that, but everything else I'm leaving on the table?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as starts this week, I think that solidifies Higby as probably a pretty solid start as long as Stafford's healthy there. So I think week one you could probably roll with Higby. I mean, Higby is the type of guy that got drafted. If he's on your roster, you're starting him anyways. Start him with more confidence
Yeah.
now. Van Jefferson, I picked him up as a stash, but I kind of want to see how it plays out before I start him with confidence. But I think Van Jefferson is the only one that was out there that I'm now picking up. I don't know about some of these other younger guys. Last year's rookie Tutu Atwell, this year's rookie Puka Nakoa. Are you into any of those guys?
The only guy on this team other than Tyler Higbee that I'm really interested in until Cooper Cup comes back and comes back healthy is Cam Akers. And again, it really has less to do with Cooper Cup and just more to do with how Cam Akers finished his season last year. I mean, he went from, being a cut candidate mid-season or a trade candidate mid-season to now Sean McVay coming out and saying this guy is going to be a centerpiece of this offense. Well, whether he wants it or not, he's going to have to be because Cooper Cup is going to miss probably at least 2 to 4 games, especially if it goes on IR. Um, but this guy, I think he has shown that he can be a lead back, and I think that with the Rams not bringing in any sort of help this offseason, whether it was in the draft or free agency, in terms of bringing in another running back, at least for competition, shows the confidence that they have in this guy. I mean, the next guy behind Cam Akers is Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers. And then Zach Evans, who's a rookie out of Old Miss, who, he looked great. I thought he was, one of the more explosive backs in this running back class, but I think the situation didn't work out for him. So I think Zach Evans, if any of these guys are going to compete for carries, it's going to be him. But I don't see that happening until week 7 or 8. It's going to take a while for that to happen. And by then, hopefully, Cooper Cup is back and healthy. So Cam Akers, I've been on him, 24 years old, um, you know, decently sized back, 5'10, 217 pounds. I like what he brings to the table, especially how he finished last year. I think he's going to start the season off good, especially against a pretty good Seattle defense up in Seattle.
I was gonna say, so are you rolling with him as a top 20 running back traveling up to the 12th man territory in the Seahawks?
100%. Yeah. I mean, and we'll talk about this later on, but for, my power four play this week over on Prize Picks, I do have a Cam Akers prop. So I have confidence that this guy could be a top 20 back this week. Um, I think there are certain positions and certain players that when they play a good defense, a better defense, it boosts their volume up, which I like, which eventually can turn into more production. It's not always about finding the best matchup because sometimes when there's the best matchup, there's a disparity in the score, and all of a sudden your better players aren't seeing the ball as much, in the third and fourth quarter when garbage time happens, unless they're trailing, right? So I see this game between the Rams and the Seahawks being a little closer than I think most people do. I think that the Rams are going to come out and compete every single game this year. I don't think they're going to be that great, especially without Cooper Cup. But I do think that because of that, Cam Akers' volume is going to go up, and I think his production goes up there too.
Okay.
So, staying on the West side, but staying going to the AFC West, there's been a changing of the guard at the head coaching position for the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton making his debut in the regular season. What's your take on this team to start the season? You know, you got Russell Wilson bouncing back from his, statistically his worst year in his, historical MVP Hall of Fame career. Um, and guys that are like Jerry Judy, who potentially might not be playing. Javonte Williams coming back from an ACL tear and having Samaje P. Ryan the potentially lead back this week. So with all that said, especially with Deshaun Payton, being the guy in charge, what are your thoughts on, this team? And are you trusting anything? Are you fading anything? Are you taking the wait and approach? What's your take on the Broncos?
Well, as you know, I like to ride the hype trains. Things went about as bad as they could have went last year with Russell Wilson, and I think they've bottomed out, and they're going to be better. I mean, they can't get any worse. They're going
Can't.
to be better, but I honestly do think there's going to be a bounce back. I think Wilson is motivated to show that he doesn't suck. Um, I think you have a lot of motivated guys there that want to show that they are still a good team. So
Hmm.
and Vegas, their defense is not great. So I think there's potential for a big blow up from this Broncos offense. I guess it was in a later segment when we talk about who are starting and starting with caution, but I like a pass catcher with the Broncos. I'm just not sure who because I need to see what's going on with Jerry Judy. But I think they're going to put up some points this weekend. So I think that Sean Payton will start off with a bang, and you're going to see a lot of output from this offense. So I guess that means I'm also high on Russell Wilson. I also don't know how the running back carries are going to shake out if they ease Javante in, if this
Hmm.
is more of a Samaje Perine sort of show or what.
Yeah, I think Javante definitely gets eased in. I don't expect him to come in and get 20 plus touches in his first game back from an ACL tear. Especially against this defense. The Raiders, in my opinion, they have a pretty good defense, with Max Crosby and their secondaries, getting better. I think, especially with, some of the news of Sean Payne coming out and telling Russell Wilson to, quote, quit kissing the babies. You're not running for public office. I think he's trying to light a fire to where Russell Wilson is more focused on, winning games than he is about Russell Inc. And I think he's going to do that by throwing the ball. Sean Payton, he had a guy in Drew Brees when he was with New Orleans his entire career there. So to go from a guy like Drew Brees to coaching a guy like Russell Wilson, it's really not that big of a trade off. I mean, they're both guys who can command an offense. They can throw the ball downfield, and I think Sean Payton's going to want to use his receivers, whoever they are. I see this being a game won through the air, especially with good old Jimmy G on the other side now. I think they're going to rely on Josh Jacobs, and Josh Jacobs, in my opinion, is the best player on that team. So I think if they can run the ball well, I think Denver's going to have to throw the ball well. And so, yeah, I'm in on the receivers, cautiously optimistic on the Denver side. Again, there's a lot of health news that we have or injury news that we have to get first. But I'm also in on Russell Wilson. I think is a great streaming option this week for basically free in all formats.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So speaking of spotlight, let's start talking about some rookie receivers that are getting their first regular season action in week one. Receivers that we love, receivers that we hate or don't love, however you want to phrase that. Kevin, kick us off. Who's a receiver that you like or don't like who's making their NFL debut this week?
Well, before I try to go too deep into the rankings, if I start with kind of that top crew of rookie receivers that were drafted, the first rounders. So we're looking at between Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Zay Flowers. I am all in on Zay Flowers. It's not just because I drafted him in our dynasty league. I've loved what I've heard. I've loved what I saw from him in the preseason games, and you know the storyline has been about how Lamar is going to throw more and run less in
Mm-hmm.
this new offense,
Mm-hmm.
which he's got Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews is great. Odell Beckham, is he hurt? They said he was hurt, and then a post of him saying he wasn't hurt. it feels like things are getting started off on the wrong foot already there with Odell Beckham. And then I don't trust Bateman. I think that he is, the whole time Lamar has been there, the offensive weapons outside of Andrews have not been the most dazzling set of weapons. But I think Zay Flowers is going to be the most dynamic receiver they've given Lamar to be able to throw to,
Hmm.
and I think he's going to go off. Like he's going to actually be a very sound fantasy start, and I think that he will have the best rookie wide receiver season of this class. I
Well,
am all in on Zay Flowers. I think he's gonna. Initially, I thought it'd be Quentin Johnston, but honestly, I think Zay is going to put up the best rookie receiver season.
yeah, I had Quentin Johnson as my third overall rookie wide receiver in this class. I for me, it's kind of a 1A, 1B between Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. I think Zay Flowers is going to end up being more productive in this offense because of his situation. We talked about this in our last episode. Um, I think Jordan Addison is going to have to compete with the best receiver in the NFL and one of the better tight ends in the NFL, which is tough. Um, so Zay Flowers, yeah, I see him coming in and not just being a slot guy like he was at Boston College. I see him being the guy that can go outside and take a guy down the field with him. And worst case, he's going to draw coverage off of guys like Mark Andrews or J.K. Dobbins, and eventually it's going to get him open, and he's going to make plays because he is a shifty guy who can make one cut, and all of a sudden he's got four guys, behind him chasing him. So I like Zay Flowers a
Yeah,
lot, especially this week. Um, but overall, I think he comes out the gate hot, and I think I wouldn't say he's going to finish as a top 12 receiver this week. That's just because I want to see what more so what Lamar does with the whole pass more, run less approach to the season. But I definitely think he has a potential to be a top 25 receiver in week one. That's his first regular season game action. And then a rookie receiver that I really like this week, and really just in all formats. It's going to be Jaden Reed, and we're going to have more on him later on. We were talking about this before the show, and there was kind of some injury news that I didn't really realize. Christian Watson this week is out. Romeo Dobbs is playing hurt, so you look at this Green Bay Packer team and you wonder who is going to be the guy, and Jaden Reed, he could be the guy. At least for the next couple of weeks while this team gets better. Looking from a dynasty perspective, if you get any of these Green Bay Packer receivers, I think it's gonna be a dart throw. I think Christian Watson is the most talented out of the three, just because he does have the NFL experience and he made plays with Rodgers last season. But Jaden Reed, he's the healthiest. He's built chemistry with Jordan Love. He's a guy that I think that one play and he's going from a 2 point fantasy score a week to a 10 point fantasy score a week. So what are your thoughts on Jaden Reed? I know you like him. I know we were talking about him. We'll have more on him later. Is there anything else you have on him or anyone else in the Green Bay locker room?
yeah, just Jaden Reed. I'll echo your thoughts there with Christian Watson out. Jordan Love, they want him to start off strong. After all the shadow of Aaron Rodgers that's been hovering over Green Bay, they want Love to come out and put that all to rest and show that he's good. And he's playing not a great defense.
Hmm.
You think of the NFC North as the black and blue, great defense, the Chicago Bears, monsters of the Midway, and all that. That's gone out the window this
Hmm.
year. The NFC North has got some crap defenses. Probably the cream of the crop is who you watched last night, the Lions.
Yep.
They're probably the best defense in the division, and that's like middle of the pack. So there's going to be some high scoring games. So I think everyone's in on Justin Fields and that Bears offense with DJ Moore. So I think the Bears will put up points and the Packers will need to keep pace with them. So I think they will be throwing the ball, and Jaden Reed is right there to get a lot of targets. So I think it could be in for a sneaky big week.
Yeah, for sure. And just to we talked about Quentin Johnston, just a minute ago. Looking at his matchup this week against Miami, he's kind of a guy too that I think could have a sneaky start to the season. I know Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if he's out or if he's just playing a little injured. I know there's been some.
I
Um,
thought he was on the pup.
is he on the pup still? Okay. I
Let
didn't
me
know if
look.
yeah, I didn't know if he was out or if he is just playing a little injured. So this was back on.
Jalen Ramsey's out till December.
Okay, so that makes
Meniscus repair.
yeah, so that makes me like this matchup even more. Whoever the number one corner is on Miami with Jalen Ramsey going down, they're going to be switching between Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And don't forget about a shifty little running back who's really a receiver, an Austin Eckler. He's probably going to have a corner or a safety on him all game. So I think Quentin Johnson, he's another rookie who could sneak into that top, maybe not top 20, maybe top 30 finishes this week. Again, he's a big receiver where all it takes is one or two jump balls, and all of a sudden the guy has, 14 plus fantasy points. So
Yeah.
I like Quentin Johnson a lot, especially against Miami, where they are a track team. We've talked about them countless times this offseason, how they are just speed kills, like legitimately probably one of the fastest teams in the NFL, if not the fastest by a wide margin. So I think I think the Chargers could find themselves chasing points in a really good game and a good AFC showdown week 1. So Quinn Johnson, the more we talk about it, I kind of like him this week, even though he's kind of a dart throw being the third receiver in this offense.
I'm not out on him. I just have him listed in my wait and see. I don't want to ride the hype train too much on him
For
just
sure.
because there's a lot of options for them. It's, as long as the other receivers are healthy, which they are to start the year,
Yep.
of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. It's just, there's a lot of competition for targets, but I think there will be deep shots taken to him. And if they connect, he's going to go from 0 to all of a sudden double digit fantasy points because of
Yep.
a deep bomb, and he's got a quarterback that can deliver it. So I'm just gonna wait and see if they hit that home run or not this week.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, Mike Williams and Quentin Johnson are kind of the same player, right? Quentin Johnson just a younger version of Mike Williams, and if this team can live in if they can get to the red zone 2 or 3 times this game, they should be coming away with 2 or 3 touchdowns as well. I mean, you got two guys who can run, the jump ball in the corners. Keenan Allen is no, shy guy from running across the field up the middle and catching a slant or something and taking it up the field and taking a big hit. We've seen it his entire career. And then there's the Austin Eckler effect too, where I think just by having these three guys around Quentin Johnston, again, especially this week in a very competitive game, he might be the lone guy out that guys kind of forget about because they're more focused on those guys that have been on this offense for more than just this year. So we'll wait and see.
And and let us not forget Dicker the kicker, my kicker in
Hey,
redraft.
yeah, I got him I solely drafted him on name. I did not realize that he's one of the higher end kickers per fantasy pros. So we'll wait and see. Um, Moving on from rookie receivers to rookie quarterbacks, there's really only a couple that I want to talk about and touch on. The first one being Anthony Richardson. Um, is he a guy that you trust week 1, especially against the Jacksonville Jaguars? I mean, Kevin, what are your thoughts? I have some pretty strong opinions on this, but I want to get your take first.
I mean, I have him in our dynasty league, but he is a stash and wait and see. I'm not. I don't have the balls to ride of him week 1. I think there's going to be ups and downs. I'm worried about his inaccuracy, but I think he will make plays that wow you. And I think you're just going to want to stash him and wait until he shows that he can put up consistent points before you're riding with him as your starter. So um, I think when it comes to these rookie QBs, uh, he's the one I would ride with of the 3 starters if there's a gun to my head. But ideally, you have him on your bench and you're waiting for him to prove it.
No, that's completely fair. Reason why I ask about him is because I did not take a quarterback as early as I should have in one of my drafts, and I ended up with Anthony Richardson as my starter. It was him or Geno Smith when it came to me late in the draft, and this is a 14 team league, so I didn't really have much option. And it was, do I take the floor of Geno Smith and hope that he can replicate what he did last year, or do I just say fuck it and try and go for a guy who could week 1 be Justin Fields 2.0 or even Justin Fields 0.1? I mean, who knows? Um, 99% of the time, I agree. I would be sitting and waiting. That 1% time is that one draft where I waited too long to grab a quarterback, and I'm playing, Anthony Richardson. I think this week he's fantasy relevant if you're okay with a quarterback having a very, very low floor with a very, very high ceiling. This guy could put up 8 points, he could put up 28 points. He's really the only guy on this Colts team that I trust, especially with Jim Irsay still not really making any noise on the Jonathan Taylor front. Um, so yeah, Anthony Richardson's a guy that I'm, wishy-washy about. I'm playing him because I have to, but at the same time, I think he could do worse this week, especially in a game where I find the Colts trailing to the Jaguars really early on in this game, because I think that they do have a really good offense. Um, for that reasons, I would be in on him if I need to be. Um, let's shift gears from the AFC North and the rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson, and let's talk about the NFC South quarterback Bryce Young, Carolina Panther starting quarterback. What are your thoughts on this guy? I mean, Adam Thielen's already hurt. He's supposed to be that veteran in the locker room. I think DJ Chark is also hurt. So this guy doesn't have a plethora of weapons to throw to. Is Bryce Young a guy that you're trusting the number one pick in this draft in April? Is he a guy that you're riding with, or is he another guy that you're going to wait and see how his start to the season goes before you put him in your lineup?
Oh man, yeah, I didn't even know Adam Thielen was hurt. I see he's
Yeah.
questionable. Chark is questionable. So I guess Mingo may be the main receiver there. I am less bullish on him than I am Richardson. I'd be concerned about that. It's again, I want to wait and see with him. Um, I so I'm expecting Atlanta to come out strong this
Hmm.
game. I think
Same.
Atlanta's made improvements. So I'm just a little worried that he might get a rough welcoming to the NFL, and that Atlanta might go put up a bunch of points and have a rough day for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and Bryce Young, I think he looked okay in training camp compared to the other guys. And this is just my personal take, whether you follow statistics to a T, or if you look at rookie quarterbacks and expect them to be, completely underwhelming or completely overwhelming because they were such a high draft pick. I don't think Bryce Young looked all that special in preseason. I think he, of all the quarterbacks, find himself in the worst situation in terms of what team he plays on, and that's going to really impact his first year or two. um, so unless he really does break out early on this season, he's definitely a guy that I am having the wait and stash approach, especially in Dynasty. I'm probably not playing him at all this year at this point, unless injuries rack up or he just completely starts to blow up. I don't see that happening. But there's one guy in the AFC South that I do see, or I'm sorry, the AFC North, no, AFC South, that I do see potentially blowing up right away, and that's rookie quarterback CJ Stroud. I think he has looked like the best quarterback in preseason camp, not just preseason games, but camp. I think he has the most prototypical build of an NFL. I think he finds himself in a situation with younger receivers like Nico Collins and Tank Dell, with a running back who I think could be in the upper echelon tier of running back at some point, and that's in Damian Pierce. And the fact that he has a defensive minded head coach, I think that really helps rookie quarterbacks who have a good, solid head coach who's a defensive mind to keep the game slow and to let the offense play at the pace that they want to. And I think that's what CJ Stroud was able to do at Ohio State, and that's why he was so successful. So, again, I'm not starting him this week because they are playing the Commanders and they have a low key, really good defense. They like to get after the quarterback with that D line. But if I had to play a quarterback of these three, Stroud is kind of my 1B option this week. What are your thoughts on Stroud?
Yeah, honestly, I think a lot of people have kind of thought, with flip flopping, where Richardson was the top guy, and then it was going to be Young, and then Stroud. I think they thought Stroud was in the rougher situation because Young had Thielen and uh, uh, I'm trying to think of the running back they signed, Miles Sanders. But I think it's flip flopped. I think Houston is actually a better spot than people realize. A lot of people are ripping the receivers. I don't think the receivers are that bad. I think
Mm-mm.
the receivers didn't get a really good chance to show themselves yet with how the situation's been and also their age. So I think Nico's a decent receiver. I think Tank Dell is going to surprise some people, and I think Mechie also might make some noise. So I do like the pieces around there. I've been very big on Dameon Pierce. I think he's going to have a good year. He just his running style is so he's so explosive and
Hmm.
physical. I just like his running style. He kind of reminds me of like Marion Barber the third,
Hmm.
who just had a very physical downhill explosive running style. And it was hard to see everything that Pierce had last year because he was the only thing that offense had going for it, and then he got hurt. So people are just keying on him. So it's I like what Stroud has going on this year. I'm a little worried about week one. They have to travel to Baltimore. It's going to be an intimidating environment going up against Lamar. But we'll see what they have. It's not like a juicy matchup for him at all. But I think that he will have a better week than Young for sure.
Oh, I said Washington. That's a mistake on my part. Yeah, Houston playing at Baltimore. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't like that matchup as much because not because I think that Baltimore has a better defense than Washington. I think, the complete opposite. I think Washington has a better defense and at least, pressure on the quarterback. Um, I think Baltimore gets up early in this game, and I think that Stroud has to play from behind, and that's not always what you want in terms of fantasy production because that's when bad decisions are made. That's when turnovers occur. Um, yeah, I think we're kind of in the same boat. There's really no rookie quarterback that we feel like, back when like Vince Young came into the league. We're like, oh, this guy's a day one starter. He's going to be on my fantasy team and I'm starting him week one. There's no one like that, I think, this year, with the exception of maybe Anthony Richardson just because of his rushing upside. So,
I have three rookies that I am like sight unseen riding the hype train right into. One of them last night Gibbs, which didn't work out. Um, Bijan, I'm all in. If you drafted him, he's obviously your RB1 anyways, but I don't think they're gonna be light on carries for him. I think Bijan, it's gonna be the Bijan show on Sunday, and I'm very excited for it. And then Zay Flowers. Those are my
mhm,
three, just sight unseen. I'm all in on them. Don't need to wait and see. The rest of the rookies, I kind of want to wait and see what they got before I'm all in on them.
for sure. I mean, before we get to our stardom and situms for the week, do you have any concern with the blow up potential with Bijan this week playing Carolina at home? I mean, Carolina's not good. I mean, there's an argument to where Carolina could be fighting with teams like Houston and Arizona and Tampa Bay for one of the top draft picks that come next April. I mean, I still think Robinson gets enough work to be viable, but do you think that he's going to be able to be viable the entire game before Atlanta, in my opinion, runs away with this game?
Well, I mean, if Atlanta runs away with the game, I think that's going to be more carries for him. Maybe they mix in Algier, but I think if they get up big, that's more of a worry for the likes of Drake London and Pitts. I think that if they got a big lead going in the second half, at least for the entire third quarter, they're still going to want to ride Bijan. So I don't have concerns about game script of him.
Okay. And that's one thing too that, unless you're playing daily fantasy, you never want to use game script as a rule of thumb for, do I want to play a guy or not? Um, because it's the NFL, weird stuff happens, especially, I mean, granted they're playing in a dome this week, but weather plays a huge factor. Injuries around the, key positions plays a factor. So I only ask because he is a rookie running back and, he was taken so high in the draft. And, if the Falcons get up big early, I was really just trying to get at, do we see more Tyler Algier than maybe we expect to see week one? But I'm in there with you. I'm writing Bijan all year. I have him in one league, and I got him in a couple best ball drafts, and I couldn't be more stoked to have him where I was able to get him. So,
Yeah, I mean a small sample size in the preseason, but his carries were explosive.
yep,
I'm excited.
yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. So we are going to get to our first edition of our weekly starts and sits. Kevin and I are going to go through 5 or 6 players that we're going to advise you to start, sit, or start with caution. And we're going to start with the Tampa Bay taking on the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Mike Evans. I have him this week as a start, even with the slight injury and contractual concerns going on in Tampa Bay. He's getting older. He's 30, 31 years old. He's taking on a Vikings team that struggled last season against the pass. And he definitely got a downgrade at quarterback going from the GOAT to Baker Mayfield. Um, I still think that he's one of the better talented receivers in this league. So I've had a couple of buddies ask me, would you play Mike Evans, especially with Chris Godwin looking so good in camp and having a very quick connection with Baker. I mean, Mike Evans is chasing Jerry Rice's 1,000-yard reception record, and I think that he starts that this week with Minnesota. So I would say play Mike Evans this week with confidence. I think he's good for 6 grabs, around 80 yards, and potentially a touchdown. So I think he's in for a big week.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that.
And then going to
All
your
right, you want?
going to your first start sit, we're going up to the Pacific Northwest, back to 12-man country. Who do you got, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm gonna steal your thunder because this has been the guy you've been pumping up all off season. But Tyler Lockett, I am starting him with confidence. I think he's going to be a top 15 play this week. So you got the Rams, who do not have a great defense. They have Aaron Donald. But then after trading away Ramsey, I don't think the Rams are going to have much of a defense at all. And I think the Seahawks are going to run and throw all over them. And I like Lockett for a couple big plays. All in on Lockett this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, and with JSN, has JSN been ruled out yet for this week?
I thought he's so. I thought he was going to miss like the first couple.
Yeah, so oh no. Seahawks expect wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba to play versus Rams.
Um,
For me
he'll
that
play,
doesn't.
but
Yeah.
I think they'll ease him in.
Yeah, I mean, and even if he wasn't hurt, this has been kind of the point that I've been making all year is Pete Carroll is a guy of trust. When Pete Carroll finds guys in his locker room, except Marshawn Lynch in the Super Bowl at the 1 yard line, he when he finds guys that he trusts, he plays those guys. Tyler Lockett has been one of those guys who has done nothing but produce for Pete Carroll in the Seahawks offense. So even if Jackson Smith and Jigba was 100% healthy, I see this still being DK at the 1, Tyler Lockett at the 2, Jackson Smith and Jigba coming in at three wide receiver sets, but it's going to be those two main guys. And yeah, I think against a very poor Rams defense and in a game where, again, don't let the matchup on paper look like a game is going to get away from you. This could be an ugly game really quickly to where both teams are either scoring at a high rate or neither team is scoring at any sort of rate. So, um, worst case scenario, I think Tyler Lockett, he's good right around 8, 9 targets for 5 or 6 catches, around 70 yards, and then potentially a touchdown. So, I think he's good for anywhere between 13 and 19 points this week. So, he's definitely a smash play for me as well. And then my next start, it's a start with caution, and this is the Miami running back room. Raheem Mostert will be starting the season off as the RB1 in Miami. I've never been super high on Raheem Mostert only because he's always been that plug-in guy, and I know he had a couple of big weeks and even a big season back when he played for San Francisco. Um, I think age plays a factor. I think the fact that Devin Achane is coming into week 1 with no injury designation. I see this being a 65-35 split between the two. I don't see Devin Achane getting too many rushing attempts. I see him being more involved in the passing game. I think they're going to try and do what they need to do to preserve Mostert, especially with Jeff Wilson hurt and really no one else in this backfield with Miles Gaskins being cut a couple weeks ago. So I like I would play Raheem Mostert at my running back too. I'd feel more comfortable playing him at the flex. And I would be okay with Devin Achane in deeper leagues at a flex spot. It's only if it's PPR. If it's standard, I'm not playing him at all this week. Just it's a wait and see approach with him. But again, start with caution. I think there's some opportunity against this Chargers team. Kevin, anything with the Miami running backs on your end?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that Mostert is the slam dunk in this backfield, but I just don't trust it because I don't know how they're going to use A Chain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it's the Miami backfield is one I want to see how it plays out before I'm confident in any of them. I guess the one positive of Mostert is it's week 1 and he's healthy,
Yep.
and that probably will not be the case come year end. But
Yep.
I'm still very cautious on him.
Absolutely. Well, another guy that we were talking about earlier,
Oh,
starting.
I'm gonna pause you. I'm gonna
Yeah, go
pause you
ahead.
here if it's mine. I'm gonna throw in one that I wasn't talking about before.
Yeah, absolutely. Go
Uh,
ahead.
I'm gonna throw in a sit. It's probably not the most shocking thing you've ever heard, but the Arizona Cardinals are gonna suck. Um, they're gonna they Colt McCoy was their quarterback. They got rid of him. They got a fresh new quarterback that they're
Come
just
on
throwing
down,
right in
Mr.
there.
Josh Dobbs, out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, out of nowhere. So just throwing in a new starting quarterback on already not a loaded team at the last second, it's not a recipe for immediate success, in my opinion. And there probably weren't any Cardinals that you were really rolling with confidently as it is, but I just want to emphasize people probably have James Conner sitting right at the end of their running back two list,
Hmm.
maybe a flex. I would fully bench him, not even play him in the flex. They're going on the road to Washington against a good Commanders D. I would stay clear of everything Arizona this week, including Connor.
Yeah, and with that said, if you're playing daily fantasy sports, FanDuel or anything like that, or if you're running a league where you play a defense, whoever Arizona's playing that week, play the defense. I mean, seriously, like you will probably have a top scoring defense every time you start the D that plays Arizona. They are going to be atrocious this year, and we're talking potentially historically bad in terms of offensive production. So yeah, it'll be a fun one to see. But I think Washington just dismantles them, and I think Josh Dobbs could potentially retire at halftime. Pull
Yeah,
Vontae Davis. So my next sit is it's going to be the Indy wide receiver room. We kind of talked about this before, and it's rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson is taking over this team. Wasn't the most accurate quarterback in college. Can he make that step and be more productive in the NFL game? I think so. And there's been, reports of him, staying after, super late after training camp and practices and even games to get mental reps in or even physical reps in on the field. So I think this is a sit and wait approach. I don't trust, especially against the Jacksonville defense that I think is really good. I think that they're going to run away with it, and I think if anything, Anthony Richardson will remain fantasy relevant because he's going to get it done with his legs. I think he's good for 55 to 57 yards on 8-9 rushing attempts. So I would take Anthony Richardson with like we said earlier with the cautious optimistic that he's going to get points with his legs. But this Indy wide receiver room, I don't trust because I want to see and wait what they do chemistry wise.
yeah,
And then we briefly talked, about the changing of the guard, the coach here, and then also we briefly touched on some injury news. But Kevin, you have an interesting start depending on some injury news out in the AFC West in Denver. Who are we talking about here?
yeah. Again, I think we're a little different on the Vegas D. I think Vegas is they do have the pass rusher, but I think overall the Vegas defense is bottom half in the league. Going on the road to Denver, I think there's going to be some points put up in the air in Denver. It's just who's it going to?
Exactly.
I'm in on Greg Dulcich. He was my pickup in redraft because I drafted Kelsey. I'm one of those Kelsey owners. So I'm going with Dulcich this week, and I think he will put up some points. And then I also think the receivers will put up points. It's just a matter of who. They haven't ruled out Jerry Judy yet as of this taping. If he's playing and he's playing not on a pitch count where he's actually out there, I'm rolling with Judy for sure. If he's out, then I think it might be a big week for Sutton. So I just want to put a wait till game time, see who's playing, but I'm in on the Broncos pass catchers this week.
Yeah, for me it's hard. I've been burnt by Cortland Sutton so many times, but I think maybe with Sean Payton coming in, this is the time to buy low on him because I think a lot of people who have been burnt by Sutton swore him off just like I am. Like I'll never own him again. I traded him as soon as I could last year. Maybe he is turned into, kind of a Michael Thomas in Denver, being more the slant possession guy to where he's going to rack up those PPR points. Um, and maybe I'm proven wrong this week against Vegas, who again I think that they have an underwhelming, underrated defense. I think that they're a little bit better than maybe some people give them credit for, and that's primarily due to their pass rush. But yeah, if Judy is out, things for me change. Dulcich for me, I think is the biggest one where he climbs in my rankings even higher to be a top 8 tight end this week. So and then the last start and sit that we got for this week, and that's going to be wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, Tennessee Titan wide receiver. I have him as a start, but only in the flex. Going against New Orleans Saints is not the most ideal. first matchup, especially when you're rolling with Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback. D Hop is going to be covered and blanketed by Marshawn Lattimore all game. I think that the Saints last year, they were a middle of the pack run defense. I think that this game is going to be won through Derrick Henry. I see Derrick Henry coming out. We talked about the tread on the tires. How much is there left? This is one of those games where he's going to see the ball 25 plus times. They're just going to give him the ball, and Vrabel's going to control the clock. And even if they don't put up a ton of points, what they're going to do is make sure that Derek Carr and Chris Olave and Michael Thomas and their playmakers on offense don't see the field. That's always been his MO, and he's going to do that this game, I think, week 1. So Hopkins, I like in future matchups, but this week I'm not a huge fan of. But again, he's not a bad plug and play flex play. Any thoughts on Hopkins or anyone else from the Titans offense?
Uh, I am cautious with them. I think that the Saints are going to be improved this year. I think it's going to be rocking in New Orleans. I think the New Orleans defense is, middle of the pack. So I don't know. I think the Derek Carr era is going to start off with a win for New Orleans. So I'm a little bit cautious on everyone with the Titans. So I think I'm pretty much out on them again. If you have Hopkins, you're probably rolling with him in the flex. If you have Henry, you're not benching him. But I'm a little cautious because I do think the Saints are going to have a good game.
Agreed. Yeah, and again, we've talked about this in a couple of episodes. Don't go into especially these tough matchups and expect Henry to be a consistent top 3 running back week in week out. I think he's consistent enough to still finish this year as a top 5 running back in any format, PPR, standard, half PPR. But he's going to have frustrating weeks. I don't think this is one of those weeks just because I think his volume is going to be so high. But I think it will be frustrating for other people on this Tennessee Titans offense. Treylon Burks, I think he's going to be frustrating this season. It's going to start week 1. And I think D-Hop, I think he's going to be, again, one of those guys where I don't think he has as bad of a time in Tennessee as Julio Jones did last season. But Tennessee has proven to be the old folks home for wide receivers. So we'll see if he can come out and show flashes, but it's also Ryan Tannehill at quarterback where he's really good at handing the ball off. But we'll see if he can beat this New Orleans Saints defense. All right, so moving on to a weekly segment that Kevin and I will be doing. It's kind of a way that we talk about waiver wire pickups, but it's not specific to waiver wires. It's not specific to Dynasty or redraft or anything like that. What Kevin and I are going to do is each week we're going to pick one player that we find is a guy that we want to buy before everyone else does. There's always that one player every single season, whether it's redraft or Dynasty, that blows up, and someone had picked him up the week before. And so what we're here to do is we're here to help you find those players week in and week out to get them before your friends do, so that you can have that I can't talk tonight, Kevin, that league winner before your buddies can. So my first guy is someone that I've had a lot of hype around all season, all off season. There's a lot going on with this team, new offensive coordinator, new pieces have been added to this offense the last couple of seasons. Some dynamic route runners, a stable backfield of guys that can make plays both in the running game and the passing game. And that second year quarterback, Sam Howell, really a rookie. I mean, if he's kind of the Ben Simmons of the NFL, where I think he could still be potentially a rookie of the year candidate because he only played 1 game last year. Get him now. You can get him essentially for free. He's on the waiver wire. I've been preaching this all year long. Eric Bieniemy is coming into Washington. He's going to run an RPO system very similar to the one that Sam Howell ran very successfully at the University of North Carolina. He's got 2 really good receivers in Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, I think, are both dynamic playmakers in the backfield that are going to give him that security blanket when he needs. And their defense is good. I mean, they when you're a young quarterback, you always want to have 2 things. You want to have a good run game and a good defense to fall back on. And he has that early on in his career. So especially in dynasty formats, maybe not in redraft, don't go and pick him up quite yet, but in dynasty, especially if you're playing super flex or 2 quarterback leagues, get Sam Howell now, because I promise you by week 5, week 6, when he starts to hit his stride, once he starts to feel comfortable in this NFL speed, very much different from, college, he's going to be the guy that you're going to wish that you grabbed earlier. And And a lot of it's because of the playmakers around him. I mean, not a lot of young quarterbacks come into the league and have a Terry McLaurin and a Jahan Dotson with an offensive coordinator like Eric Bieniemy. So, Kevin, I want to get your take on Sam Howell. I know I've probably preached on this guy more than anyone you know. Do you have anything about this guy that you like, that you don't like? Would you be willing to pick him up in Dynasty, or are you going another direction with another player?
If I didn't already have my developmental guy in Richardson, I would definitely be grabbing him. I it feels like a lot of people are just assuming he's going to suck because he didn't blow up last year.
Hmm.
You know, in the olden days, it used to be about you grab these mid to late round quarterbacks and you develop them in the darkness and mold them into your quarterback of the future and then put them in. Now it feels like everyone wants that round one stud out of college that goes in and immediately starts day one and sets the league on fire.
Hmm.
So because he wasn't that, I feel like a lot of people are assuming he's not good, but they did draft him last year. There were a lot of people that were high on him in the rankings. So I think he has a chance to be good, and I think people need to give him a chance. He's definitely got the weapons. Though I guess McLaurin's banged up, but yeah, I think he's a guy that if he blew up, it would not be the most shocking thing in the world, and you would be happy to get him before he's announced to be the waiver wire pickup of the week, and you spend a bunch of budget on him.
And let's not forget, again, all it takes is one game for everyone to chase the waiver wire and pick someone up, right? We just talked about this matchup. Washington plays Arizona week 1. If you have a
Yes.
roster spot now, and if you want to grab someone in Dynasty for a developmental quarterback, now is the time to do it, because all it's going to take is one 35-point game from Sam Howell, one 30-point game from Sam Howell. And all of a sudden, he is going to be the number one quarterback pickup on the waiver wire. Get him now before he's going to cost you any fab, any trade, anything. Like, get him tonight. Like, it's 10:47 Central Time. We're going to have this posted as soon as possible. Like, the second you hear this bit, go pick him up. Don't waste any more time. Um, okay, so I'll get off my soapbox and I'll tone it down a little bit. We talked about the guy that you want to stash, Kevin, a little bit earlier in the show. But I want to hear your build up, because this is a guy that was, no, I'm gonna back up. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, well, yeah. So we've already said his name, but Green Bay Packer receiver Jaden Reed. He's he's a rookie. He was a second round draft pick. So I mean, if we're looking at I think a lot of people have kind of assumed that the Packers receiver room is Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and then maybe Reed can sneak in as the wide receiver three. But they're all young. They're all young receivers. I should say Reed actually was kind of an old rookie. He's already 23 years old. Um, but they used a second round pick on him. That would put him about the same as Christian Watson as far as pedigree and draft capital that they've used. So I think he's coming in with the same pedigree as the guy that everyone thought would be the number one with Watson. He's a guy that could definitely establish himself as the number one or number two receiver. And with the injuries in the receiver room and a very easy matchup. He could come in at week one and put up some big numbers and easily be the waiver wire pickup of week two. So if you have the room, I'm going to say stash Reed right now, Jaden Reed, and just watch him blow up against the Bears.
Yeah, I like this kid a lot. Like you said, he's a little bit of an older rookie, but that's not always a bad thing. There could be maturity things that he can have worked out by now. And another thing to point out is it's no longer the Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay. And so I'm excited to see how a guy like Jordan Love develops relationships with receivers versus Aaron Rodgers. Because Aaron Rodgers was you're my guy, I'm throwing you the ball. Devontae Adams was the guy for a long time, just like, Jordy Nelson, and hell, even, Robert Tanyan had a season to where he was, Rodgers' go-to guy. So, I think that we see less of that and we see more of the ball spread out. But I think, at least for this week and early on in the season, with how the Green Bay Packer receiver room is a little bit banged up, yeah, I'm all in on the Jaden Reed stash.
And the only other thing I'll say on Reed is he's from what I've read, he's good at getting open and he's just kind of a very versatile guy that they can use in a lot of ways. So to me, so Christian Watson is dynamite. He's a big play. You throw it to him downfield, he's going to burn guys. But I don't think that Watson is that security blanket guy that you can
No.
just dump it to. And I think Reed is. And when you have a brand new quarterback starting who wants to, have you want him to get off to a good start. You want him to find a guy that he can trust and rely on.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure he's going to love being able to bomb it to Watson, but I think even more so, he wants to develop his trustworthy guy. And if everyone else is banged up and Reed comes in there, he could immediately form that rapport with him, and Reed might end up being his favorite guy to throw it to. So yeah, I think there's big upside that he could get that rapport week one with the quarterback, and Reed could be the guy going forward there.
Yeah, and just one more thought that I had, especially when you look at this running game, I think there's going to be a changing at the guard in this running game too, with Aaron Jones aging and AJ Dillon slowly coming up and being, hopefully the next lead back of this team. Um, I think with the questions at the running back room, when there's questions at the running back position, and there's, maybe some downfalls with the running back game, that leads to normally shorter passes. And Jaden Reed is definitely the short pass guy on this team. I think the Luke Musgrave, the rookie tight end for the Packers, he could take away some of that. But you're right, a rookie or not a rookie quarterback, but a young quarterback who wants to stay upright, he wants to keep his composure, and he wants to build confidence as the new leader of this team. He's going to want to get the ball out quickly, and that's not always going to be a tight end. It's going to be a shifty, fast, undersized receiver. So I really like Jaden Reed.
So now that I've just been pumping up Reed, I'll ask you in our dynasty league. I got Reed. He's on my bench right now. I feel like I shouldn't have him on my bench. Would you start Reed over let's see, the choice is Van Jefferson and Nico Collins.
And we're assuming Jerry Judy's out, right, in this situation.
Yeah, I
Okay.
got Judy benched right now, so I'm assuming he's out.
I think I would go Nico Collins 1, Jaden Reed 2, Van Jefferson 3.
Okay.
Um, Van Jefferson, kind of like Cortland Sutton, he's burned me a couple of times in games where he was supposed to be the guy, he was supposed to go off, but all he did was drop open passes and make Matthew Stafford very, very frustrated. I'm out on Van Jefferson. I'm not really, like we had talked earlier in the show, I'm not buying on this offense. I really like what's going on in Houston. I don't think they're going to be a top five offense by any means, but I think Nico Collins could very well be a true wide receiver one. And so out of those three, I think he just, poises the most, the highest ceiling with, the highest floor as well. So he's the guy that I would trust this week in that situation. Now,
Okay.
if Jerry Judy is playing, I think I still might go Nico Collins or Jaden Reed. I would definitely be looking at the weather, especially where Green Bay is playing Chicago in Chicago. This time of year, you never know if it's going to be windy, is it going to be hot, it's going to be cold, it's going to be raining. And same thing with Baltimore playing in Maryland. You never know what kind of weather you're going to get. So I would keep an eye on that to put that into your decision a little bit. But um, even if Judy plays, yeah, I think I'm playing Collins or Reed this week just because I don't know how much playing time he's going to see with that injury, especially with it being his hamstring. I mean, the last thing a receiver want, look at Cooper Cup. The last thing you want is to go out for 2 plays and all of a sudden he just pulled. You see him pull up, and you're like, yeah, well, it went from a 3-week injury to now a 7-week injury. I mean, I don't think Peyton's going to rush him back, knowing that he's his number one guy. Um,
Yeah, my gut tells me that Judy is out, and they're just going to wait to the last second to say
Agreed.
it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, Van Jefferson, I'm not a fan of. I can't, especially against Seattle. I mean, he's going to have a lot of attention from that secondary, knowing that he's going to be their deep threat guy. Um, I think the rookie, I can never pronounce his, is it Puka Nakua? I can never pronounce his name
Yeah, I
accurately.
think it's Puka Nakua. Yeah.
I think if I had the choice between Jefferson and him, I'm probably playing Nakua just because I think A, he was the guy in camp that was making all the plays, and B, Jefferson has just nothing been more than a letdown to me. So that might come and bite me in the ass, and it probably will, just because I'm going against the grain on this one. But yeah, Jefferson's a no for me.
Okay. I'm just going to update my roster. Don't mind me.
Well, no, I'm glad to help, and you're playing the new guy this week too. So welcome him in with a Jaden Reed or Nico Collins L. That would be a great way to be initiated to the league. Cool. Well, a little bonus content, something we'll be doing throughout the season. I love daily fantasy sports. I try to find any way that I can play. So if you're in a state where you can play, I'm sorry, Kevin, I know you can't play in, the great state of, I mean, you're close to the border and it's legal in Oregon. So I'm sure you could just mosey on down, turn on your GPS and make a couple
If
plays.
if I want to play daily fantasy, I gotta drive about 15 minutes across the bridge into Oregon and stop at like the airport parking lot or the IKEA parking lot, homeless people all around me, and sit there on my phone trying to place my bets.
That's funny.
Um, which I am not to say I haven't done that already, but it just feels weird with my kids in the back asking, "What are you doing, Dad?"
Love it. Well, this week, with it being week one, I thought it'd be fun to do a little power four play over on Prize Picks. We'll talk about these guys really quick. One of the guys we've already talked, two of the guys we've already talked about, so we won't get in to it too much. But the first line that I have, and again, NFL lines, especially week one, take advantage of them. Prize Picks, sleeper, underdog. These lines are going to get more tight as the season goes on. They're going to be less friendly to play. But lines will change more frequently as news breaks in the NFL versus sports like basketball and baseball. They tend to change a little bit more dramatically. And so I'll jump into my power four play. So the first guy I have is I'm taking the over on Drake London over 51.5 yards. I think against a Carolina defense, I think it's only going to take him 5 or 6 receptions to break this mark. And Drake London's the alpha receiver in this offense. I think Carolina is going to be hyper focused on Bijan Robinson. So I expect a big day from Drake London. I think this 51.5 receiving yards is just astronomically low for a guy who has hit this line. Let me go ahead and pull up his last five, going back to last season. His last five, he has averaged. Where is he? Come on. Did they take him off the board? Did they take him off the board? That would be something. Talking about value, and all of a sudden he's not even on the board anymore. No, he's still there. So he's hit this line the last 4 out of his last 5 starts. He's averaged 85.6 yards. And again, this is going back to last season. But something to point out, his last game, he had 120 yards against Tampa Bay, and that was with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. So I do think that this line is still extremely low, and he's a guy that if you're going to do a power four or even a 2-man, he is where I would start with my building blocks. Anything on Drake London? I know you're a shareholder of him in our Dynasty League. Like, what do you expect from Drake London this week and going forward into the season?
If you look at my rankings, which would be hard to do because I haven't posted them anywhere, I am higher on Drake London than most. It was frustrating last year. He started off okay-ish with Mariota, and then it just kind of fell off a cliff with him. And then when they put Ritter in, they barely threw the ball, but when they did, it was usually to London. Like he had it in just a crazy high target share. And again, Pitts was hurt by that point. But I think they try to make the offense more normal this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's going to be a lot of targets going his way. They
Mm-hmm.
might not throw a ton, but I still think when they do, he's going to be the first guy they look at. So I'm high on London. He put good numbers up with Ritter. I think that he's going to be somewhat of a breakout candidate this year.
100% agree. I mean, and again, going back to last season, and it's always hard to compare, especially at the receiver position, comparing year-over-year stats, especially with a new quarterback. But last year, Drake London averaged 8.66 yards per reception. So I mean, if we're talking a line of 51.5, I mean, what is that? Is that 7 catches and he clears that? 6 catches and he basically clears that. So I think he easily clears 6 receptions this game. I think he's gonna see a couple of big shots down the field. I think he again covers this line, no problem.
Yeah.
The second prop that I'm taking this week that I think is again just extremely egregiously low is Travis Etienne over 57.5 rushing yards against Indianapolis Colts. I think, for all the right reasons, this game is going to start and probably finish on the ground for Jacksonville. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a busy day at the office. I think he's going to be able to hand the ball off and just carve up this Indianapolis Colts defense and lean on his running backs. I also see, even if this game gets out of hand, which again I think it does by the third quarter, I kind of see the Jaguars taking an approach with their rookie running back Tank Bigsby, like the Lions did last night with Jameer Gibbs. I think that they're going to lean on Etienne until they feel like, okay, let's get him out of the game. But by then, I think he easily clears 57.5 yards. He's hit this line the last 4 of the last 5. The only time he didn't hit was against Tennessee, who at the time had one of the top rushing defenses in the league. He's averaged 75.8 yards going back to last year. So again, against a porous Indianapolis Colts defense, on a team that can score at will, I see Travis Etienne clearing this line relatively easy. Any thoughts on Etienne this week, Kevin?
I am all in on him. I have him in all my leagues. um, I, there's a little bit of worrying that touchdown vulturing coming out of Tank Bigsby, but as far as yardage goes, I think he's going to be a big yardage guy.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think he should clear that easy.
For sure. Awesome. And this is a new. This is my first season actually playing daily fantasy on Prize Picks for NFL. And so when I saw this prop on this next guy who we've already talked about, it was a no-brainer. And that is Derrick Henry over 18.5 rushing attempts against the New Orleans Saints. Over his last 5, going back to last season, he has averaged 20.2 carries. His last 3, though, he had 30 against Jacksonville. Oh, and he was just taken. Oh no, that was my computer. It just froze. Um, his last 3, he had 30 attempts against Jacksonville, 23 against Houston, and 21 against the Chargers. In a game against the Saints, where I think again this is going to be a high scoring game, the Saints are going to do it through the air. I think the Titans are going to do it through the ground. I think he clears this by at least 6 carries. I think he gets closer to the 25-26 rushing attempt mark this game. He looked healthy in camp. He looks like he's cut a little bit of weight. Still looks like an absolute monster. Flashback to the picture of Mark Ingram in his Letterman jacket while Derrick Henry's in his pads looking like an absolute monster. I think he has a big game this week, but I think he's only going to do that if he gets the volume, and I think he easily clears the 18.5 rushing attempts.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, that Tennessee wants to run Henry, so I think that should be a pretty easy one.
Absolutely. And then my fourth pick and my fourth prop for this week is Cam Akers over 80.5 rushing and receiving yards. Again, we talked about this guy in a couple of episodes now. He went from a forgotten player on this team to now being the centerpiece, or want to be the centerpiece, with Cooper Kupp missing some time. In his last 5, going back to last season, he has averaged 110.2 rushing plus receiving yards. Last time was against Seattle, was the last time he hit this mark, which was January 8th, the last game that he played. 128 total rushing and receiving yards. So he cleared this by almost 50 yards. With Cooper Kupp out, this is one of those lines where I see it going to be bumped. And when I say bumped, it means it's going to go up. I see this being closer to 85.5 yards by the time kickoff comes around. I think Cam Akers is going to be way too involved in this offense to not clear that. He's not the best pass catching back. He's not a Travis Etienne. He's not a Dalvin Cook or anything like that. But he can catch the ball and he can turn up the field and run. I see him getting, anywhere between 17 to 20 rushing attempts. And if he can average, 4.5 yards a carry, plus, throwing 3 or 4 receptions for, an additional 20 yards, I think he gets really close to this, number relatively quickly in the game. And I think it stays close. So I think he'll be utilized all 4 quarters. So that'll wrap it up for the Prize Picks. Please make sure to bet responsibly. Do not bet any more than you can afford to lose. We're all for fun here on the Big Dynasty Industry Podcast, but I want to make sure that we are responsible as well. So there's still some pretty cool season-long props as well on Prize Picks. I did a Dynasty version of my team. I ran through and season-long slip, $20 to pay out $500. Justin Jefferson over 1,399.5 yards. T. Higgins over 975.5 yards. Terry McLaurin over 899.5 yards. Deontay Johnson over 850.5 yards. And then, of course, I had to throw in Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler, who both have to clear about 600 and 575 yards. So go check it out. In states that you're able to play, you can easily find states that are allowed to play Prize Picks on their website. Kevin, just take that 15-minute drive and find an IKEA parking lot, grab some lunch, and, leave the kids at home. Won't be as awkward.
I might just do that tomorrow.
That'll do it for this episode. Make sure to tune in next week as we do another Thursday night football wrap up and we take a dive on to week 2.